Hey class, welcome back to our history subject and welcome back to our American Revolution book. Today we're getting into chapter 18 titled Valley Forge. So if you haven't watched chapters 1 through 17, please make sure you go back because these are all built upon one another and this chapter probably won't make very much sense if you haven't covered what has been covered before. Chapter 17, we talked about Britain's master plan and how they were going to basically knock out the Americans from the war and just take over and win. But we learned that they made some key mistakes and how those mistakes ended up turning the events of the war. The French joined, then the Netherlands and Spain, and there was a great victory at Saratoga with General Gates from the Continental Army and how they captured 6,000 of British soldiers. So now let's read what's going to happen next. Our primary focus objectives for chapter 18 are to be able to describe the conditions at Valley Forge, the title of our chapter, describe the character of George Washington and how it affected the outcome of the Revolutionary War. Identify Frederick von Steuben and discuss his contribution to the Revolutionary War. And then, as always, understand our chapter vocabulary words and phrases. I think this chapter just has words. There is 6 of them. So remember to do your chapter vocabulary assignment. Please don't copy and paste a definition from Google or somewhere else. Please use the definitions from the book. And then with the big question, please don't copy and paste your answer and use your own words. Okay, so the Continental Army faced many struggles during the war, right? They weren't trained. People were farmers, had other responsibilities. Those are, I think, the 2 ones that come to my mind. What if there's something else that comes to your mind, please let me know on Canvas or down below on YouTube in the comments. So there were many struggles the Continental Army faced, especially during one winter in particular. So we will be learning about a low point for the American Army and how the soldiers responded in the face of adversity. So we just read the last 2 chapters were talking about some awesome things that happened. The last one talking about how they captured 6,000 British soldiers, how they basically destroyed Britain's master plan. Chapter 16 talked about General Washington and his 2 secret attacks to be able to win the battle at Trenton and Princeton. But now, so they were at these high points, but now we're going to learn about a low point. But we're going to see how they faced this low point, how they faced these hardships and this adversity, right? We all are going to face adversity and hardships in our life. And so now let's learn how this Continental Army and learn about their example of how they face this adversity. So let's call attention to the big question. What were some of the challenges the Continental Army faced during the winter at Valley Forge? So as we read, let's look for the challenges that faced by Washington and his troops during this winter at Valley Forge. Let's start reading and follow along with me. Either read it in your mind, read it loud, or read, A hard winter. The winter of 1777 to 1778 was the worst time of the war for the Continental Army. Remember, this is their low point. The British had taken Philadelphia. Remember, General Howe was supposed to be bringing the main British army up north to help at that battle with the master plan at the Hudson River, but he was so focused on capturing Philadelphia. He did capture it, and this is going to be a part of their low point. Twice, General Washington had sent his soldiers into battle near Philadelphia. Twice. So each time they sent them in, they were defeated. With cold weather coming on, Washington had to choose a place to camp for the winter. The place he chose was called Valley Forge, an open field about 25 miles northeast of Philadelphia. Snow was already on the ground when the soldiers arrived in Valley Forge. They put up their tents and began building huts with whatever wood they could find. Before long, they had built 2,000 of them. The huts were drafty, dirty, and cold, but they at least put a roof over the soldiers' heads. So not very comfortable huts, but at least they had a roof. Each hut had a fireplace, but no windows. The smoke from the fires made men cough as if their lungs would burst. The winter in Valley Forge was terrible. Supplies did not arrive. Blankets were scarce. Let's pause. Let's read this together. Tricero. What's the definition of scarce? In short supply, not having enough. So they didn't have a lot, didn't have enough blankets. There was not enough food, so food was scarce. With no boots or shoes, so blankets, food, clothing were all scarce. The men wrapped their feet in rags. Let's look at this picture. Read the caption together. The winter at Valley Forge could have broken the spirit of the Continental Army. So they're facing adversity, right? A lot of their supplies are scarce. They don't have enough of it. It's cold. They do have a roof over their head, but it's not very comfortable. But what are they going to do in the face of this adversity? General Washington later said, "You might have tracked the army to Valley Forge by the blood of their feet." An officer from Connecticut explained how bad conditions were in his journal. Okay, so forge, let's read this definition before we read this little journal excerpt. So forage means food or other items found in a search. So foraging means that they don't have their supplies with them, so they're going out hunting or trying to pick, berries or nuts off of trees, fruit. They're trying to forage for either food or supplies. So let's read this journal from an officer. It snows. I'm sick. Eat nothing. No forage. Lord, Lord, Lord. Cold and uncomfortable. I am sick, discontented, and out of humor. Poor food. Hard lodging, cold weather, fatigue, nasty clothes, nasty cookery. Smoked out of my senses. I can't endure it. Why are we sent here to starve and freeze? At least 2,500 soldiers died of disease or from exposure at Valley Forge that winter. So exposure, let's read this definition together. Harm caused by cold or other extreme weather conditions. So the exposure, being exposed, being out in that cold for so long, killed 2,500 soldiers. That means that every single day, soldiers had to bury 25 or 30 of their comrades. Some men deserted, which means they simply sneaked out of the camp and went home. At the start of the winter, Washington's army numbered about 7,000 men. By the end, there were only about 4,000 left. So 2,500 left, and about 500 seems like deserted. A man of character. What did people mean when they said that George Washington was a man of great character? Let's scroll down and scroll up, character. So the qualities that make up a person. So what were the qualities that made up George Washington? Why was he a man of great character or great qualities? That meant he was honest. That meant he cared for his men, and that he was fair with them. So some people probably deserted because they didn't know or didn't believe that George Washington had great character, right? It says right here that they meant that he cared for his men. Some of them probably didn't feel like they were cared for. Like that journal, that officer is like, why are we here? They meant that people always knew where Washington stood and that he kept his word. They meant that he respected others. They meant that Washington was someone you would want on your side. He had good influence. Washington also knew enough to put able men in charge of important tasks. For example, in February, when things were at their worst, a balding, red-faced man appeared at Washington's headquarters to offer his services. His name was Baron Frederick von Steuben. Washington could tell that von Steuben knew how to train men to be soldiers. That was exactly what Washington needed. He hired von Steuben. The German officer taught the men about soldiering. He drilled them over and over. So drill, not like, a hammer drill or, like a drill that you drill screws in, right? But let's read the definition. To train or practice by repeating movement or tasks. So you can drill in soccer or football and you're drilling different like routes or moves. You can drill like in dance, trying to learn like a routine. You can drill, and like in school, we drill with your grammar and literature, literacy, writing. That's a drill. So von Steuben drilled these men over and over again. By spring, General Washington had a well-trained army for the very first time. Von Steuben was only one of a number of Europeans inspired to help the American cause. Another was a 19-year-old French named the Marquis de Lafayette. As soon as he heard that fighting had begun in America, Lafayette joined the Americans. "I am persuaded," he said, "that the human race was created to be free, and that I am born to serve that cause." I wish I could do a French voice, but I don't know how. Washington took a liking to this daring Frenchman. Lafayette quickly became one of the most trusted aides. In this definition, what does that say? A trusted assistant. Here's a picture of Baron von Steuben training or drilling the American troops. Looks like they're setting up in formation to get ready to shoot. These men in the back are loading their muskets. And so that is it for chapter 18. Thanks for staying with me, guys. We just have 2 more chapters after this one. For those that want some help with the big question, so some key points should be that the army faced many hardships at Valley Forge, right? How many people died? How many people deserted? What were the numbers of the army when they first got there at the beginning of the winter, and what were their numbers of the army after? Think about their food, their supplies, their shelter. Was it good? Was it bad? And then the elements, right? What was going on? They're in winter, so was it warm weather? Was it cold weather? Were they comfortable? And so those are some hints and points that you should be covering in your answer to the big question. Again, please use your own words and and remember to participate in the big question discussion post. Also to finish your vocabulary words. If you have any questions, please reach out to me on Canvas or through email. And I will see you guys in the next lesson. See ya.